Okay, we begin every one of these draft recordings with a quick note about what we forgot to talk about. And that's why this is a draft, because we're watching these as we do them, the whole staff I have down here on a Sunday afternoon. It is March 1st, 2015. And I had this idea, and I just have a Sunday afternoon to just bum around in the sweatshirt and bum around in the hoodie and kind of just run through some thoughts and get them on tape. Well, hard drive, I suppose. We have this beautiful studio. There's no reason I can't turn on some lights and do some rambling and have it transcribed so that we can come up with a really great presentation. This could be a great YouTube video. This is a really great educational piece that could probably help a lot of folks, including us, as perhaps it could help us, like I said, win on YouTube, get some attention, help our clients, and help us all as we think through the best way to answer the phone and talk to somebody when they call about a project that they might not be able to handle all this right out of the gate. This is a lot to handle. They might not be able to come up with a script, storyboard, but they might still need the pricing information. And part of our job is to educate the client to say, hey, before you just grab at a number, let's really think about what you want to do. And maybe there's some way to condense all of this into 5 minutes so that we could go see a customer and help them make the best decision for their business as to what the right amount of money to spend is. Let's think about return on investment. Let's talk about some terms. And before I get into ROI, let's get into some things that I forgot as I was thinking it through, as I was watching the recording of the one we just did. Stock music. I can't even make an S. Stock music or music licensing fees, that needs to go under production. Does it go into post-production? It really needs to fall into that special part of pre-production where we talked about choosing talent. Let's pick music. Let's talk about building graphics. As we talk about shopping for stock photography or stock video, let's talk about at that time is where we make a decision about how much we're going to spend on music, and building the soundtrack for the video is certainly something we want to do. Thinking about all of that in pre-production would be the smart thing to do. But as we think about guiding our clients through developing a budget, let's think about return on investment. I mean, let's look at their business. What's wrong with not just saying, hey, let me tell you about our business and what our cameras do, and we can shoot 4K and we have 3D animation capabilities and all this craziness. Let's talk a little bit about them. You know, I want to talk about me, I want to talk about, okay, nobody knows that song. All right, let's talk about return on investment, and that has to do with understanding their business, okay? If they being the client, their business, they have a brand new product they're launching, okay? And they anticipate that they're going to, nobody will tell you what their sales are going to be, what they're forecasting or this, you know, maybe they will. But if they're anticipating selling, you know, $2.5 million worth of this product over the course of, you know, the following year or so, then maybe it's worth it to spend $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 on a video, right? If there is a, you know, one-time meeting where there's 200 attendees and they want to do an opening video just for the sales meeting, for the, you know, what kind of bang of their buck are they going to get if, you know, you spend maybe $5,000 or $10,000 to do a meeting opener video? What if it's a smaller shop? What is a shop you walk into and they've got 4, 5, or 6 employees and they want to do a video that showcases their machine that stamps out parts like this, and it's a really cool machine, and then it coats them with this material and it makes it shiny, and you know, they just bought the machine, they spent $100 grand on it, and they want to make a video about it, but they're a 10-person operation, you know? What are they? And you can walk around and go, okay, well, they're probably doing $1.5 million a year is the total sales of the whole company. Can they afford to spend? Would it make sense for a smaller manufacturing operation to spend $20,000 on a video? Probably not. So part of helping a client understand what their budget should be before you even work through the whole process of what kind of talent should we have and what kind of location and all that, think about how are they going to get the best return on investment, ROI, right? What makes sense for them? Help them think it through. I don't want to gouge anybody. I want somebody to do a really great video at a really great price and be very happy with us and our results, and then make a ton of money. I want them to sell 10 times, 100 times what they spent with us, so that they're successful and they'll tell their friends and they'll come back and make more videos, and they'll just, all will be good and right with the world. That's how it should be. Okay? So let's think about ROI. Another thing to be thinking about is who in what way? Okay, remember that? Nobody remembers that. Okay. Who is going to pay everybody? Okay? You got to put together, in addition to the budget, you have to put in the production plan and all of that stuff. It's wise to put together a plan for how the business is going to work, how the business of the video, how the cash flow is going to work, who's going to pay the talent. And this is an important point because it adds to the budget. For example, let's say that video production company is going to buy everything. Okay? The production company is going to buy $500 worth of stock footage. All right? Now, this is one of the advantages of using a larger operation is when you're doing a bigger production or even a medium-sized production, there's a lot of stuff you got to buy. So you need a vendor, and this is how we advise our clients. And one point we might want to make as we're talking to clients is that we have credit cards, we have we have the means as a company to buy a lot of stuff on behalf of our client and then bill them later. But the challenge is we're going to use, if the production company is going to use their cash to buy stuff, right? You're going to pay the talent $1,500. You're going to buy plane tickets, so some $2,000 in travel. Okay. Here's the production company is going to do a 20% markup. All right? So that's something very important to consider, is that the production company can't carry the paper on anything I mean, you can at some point. I mean, if you have craft services and you buy a couple of pizzas for the crew and you have $50 and you just buy the thing and you wrap it in, I mean, that's not what we're worried about. But the production company, if they're going to buy $500 worth of stock footage and then we're not going to get, the production company's not going to get paid until the production is over, they're out that use of that $500 for a period of time. You got airline tickets, you got travel, you got talent, $1,500 talent fee, right? So all of this stuff is a 25 or a 20% markup or more, but that's something that the client needs to understand. And some clients are already aware of this. And the client might say, I'm only hiring you to shoot video and I'm going to buy everything myself. So therefore, your 20% markup on all these other things like stock music and that doesn't affect me because I am just going to pay your day rate. And this is a lot of the DIY people, okay? And the DIY people, they might even have in-house editing. This might be an ad agency or some sort of client like that they've already got it, and they just need to know the day rate for production. Okay? And they're going to, client supplies stock footage. Okay, client pays talent. Under this scenario we're discussing now. So the client contracts and pays the talent directly. The client books the hotel rooms and pays that directly. Your camera crew shows up. They walk into the hotel room. It's already paid for. And maybe the client wants the frequent flyer miles on the credit card. So they book all the hotel rooms and they pay. Some DIY clients want to do all of this. And some clients want turnkey. And in working through a budget, understanding who is going to pay. All right? The other important thing to discuss is the terms of payment. Very important to discuss. That at a lot of production companies, if you're going to be advancing a lot of expense money and you're going to be buying stuff on behalf of the client, then there probably needs to be a retainer, a deposit, or what have you. That's best in a one-off case with a new client. if you've been working for a big company they've been a long-standing client for 10 years, and they have an open account, and you know they pay in 30 days, and they spend a lot of money with you every year, and we just got a check from them 2 weeks ago for a big project we did. We know that you might go ahead and initiate some purchases on behalf of a new project they're starting without that deposit. But those are clients that have good credit with you. But terms of payment, and of course, if you're going to take a credit card and all that stuff, and the other thing to be thinking about is let's get into some other things that we might be responsible for. Release forms. Okay. Liability. Okay. Insurance, workers' comp. And liability insurance. Okay, if we're shooting a video at somebody's house and we arrange the house and it's the owner of the business, let's say his house, and the camera crew comes in and they have beautiful wood floors in the dining room where we're shooting, and one of the cameras, a light falls over and does, a couple $1,000 damage to their hardwood floor. So all the hardwood's got to come up, the whole thing's got to be sanded, everything's got to be restained. Who's paying for that? Is that the client's paying for it? There's a lot of things to be thinking about. The release forms of the people being interviewed on camera, the workers' comp for the employee. He's hanging a light, he falls off the ladder and he breaks his wrist, and he's got a $10,000, he's at the emergency room having his wrist screwed back together with the screws. And, workers' comp's going to cover that, right? What about the liability? There's production insurance in terms of equipment failure. Okay. Weather problems. Or cancellations. Right? All that kind of stuff. People get sick. It snows. Weather, product doesn't show up. You pay any kind of, you pay a deposit to, one thing we need to talk about too is the cost of studio rental. Studio rental, that cost, we need to discuss that cost back in pre-production, where we talk about acquiring things and buying things and spending money on behalf of the client. Back in the pre-production, we should include that. But we're talking about non-refundable purchases. Non-refundable reservations. What happens if we buy $800 worth of plane tickets to fly out to LA to do so, and the shoot gets canceled? Fees, cancellation fees. Nobody likes this kind of stuff, but it happens. I mean, this is just the way the world goes. So we also need to factor into the budget some sort of accommodation for trouble. A backup plan, a calamity plan, or I'm sure there's a term for it somewhere. Of course, I'm not familiar with that term is, because we never have any problems. But let's talk about that kind of stuff. Let's talk about the cost of let's also budget for overruns. You need to consider, when you're drawing up a budget or the inception of a project, overruns and scope creep. And I wouldn't mind talking about overruns or scope creep. And what would an overrun be? Let's say you do a day's worth of shooting, but you don't get the whole video done. So additional shoot time. And a little easier to absorb, perhaps, is additional editing time. But I don't want to call it additional editing time. Scope creep, let's add to that. Excessive. We're not add to scope creep, because scope creep is a different idea. Scope creep is when you get into a project and then there's a lot of other stuff that comes up that goes well beyond what was originally discussed. And that's something that you might want you can head that off at the very beginning if you have a good communication with your client. And there has to be a great deal of respect on both sides, or you get into scope creep, and either a client could take advantage of vendor, vendor could take advantage of client. It could go either way. I mean, we're not going to say clients are bad and production companies are good. It could really go either way, but scope creep, but excessive revisions. All right, excessive revisions can be a huge problem, and when you're talking about budgeting, or when you're talking about overruns or scope creep or additional shoot time, this is where you could just really get into trouble. And what causes excessive revisions? I mean, we're not going to put into blame, because again, it could happen, any person in the project can cause excessive revisions. But excessive revisions can occur in the following circumstance. Let's say third party, when the production group is operating over here, and then you have a producer group or some sort of, I hate to say, the ad agency or some group over here, and then you have the client, where there's we won't call it a third party, we'll call it a disconnect. Where there's a disconnect between the client, the final approval group, the client that has final approval, which may not be the client that commissioned the video. That client that commissioned the video might have somebody else that they have to answer to or report to or get approval to. So the final approval person might not be the client, and then the client might have the production team over here. Right? Production company. So everybody could, you hear this all the time, people are operating in silos, but the idea if there's a disconnect between any of these groups here, where the production company doesn't know who has really final approval, the client's coming in saying, well, we want to do this, okay, we got some changes, and then the client goes and presents it to the group and they say, oh, no, that's not what we wanted at all. And so production company's not able to hear from, they're not allowed to communicate with each other for a variety of reasons. Perhaps the production company is just kept over here, and the final approval group, the CEO of the company or the vice president of marketing or the whatever, and then this is the producer or the agency or the marketing person at the company that's a manager perhaps, and they commissioned the video to be done. And it just happens. And then you don't want to blame, you just want to be aware as you budget that this could happen. And it's okay to have a discussion about all the pitfalls. We're going to call this section pitfalls. But it's okay to have a discussion about pitfalls, because as part of pre-production and planning, effective planning, identifying pitfalls is very effective planning. Let's have a contingency plan in case of this. And when you've been in video production, if you're a production company or a producer that's been doing it for 20 plus years, hopefully you've been through a couple of bad situations, so you know what the pitfalls are and you can plan for them. And you could discuss them with your client in advance as part of managing their expectations or kind of working through them. Say, hey, this could happen. It could, sir, what if it rains or snows on the shoot day? What would you like to do? Would it be wise to reschedule or move it indoors? What would be we would like to shoot this outside, but let's go ahead and scout a location that if we had to shoot it inside, what kind of facilities does that particular location have that we could move everything inside on the day of the shoot if we wanted to continue? Because that's the only day that we're going to have that particular equipment or that actor or that scenario that we want to shoot. So discussing the pitfalls in advance as part of the production plan is a brilliant idea. And then finally, what we would want to discuss as part of this is understanding the delivery and distribution. Let's talk about the final part of the production planning process and take a good moment to think about delivery and distribution. All right, so we're going to call this the end. Approval. So delivery, let's say delivery and distribution. You know, the days of screening these things are over, unfortunately. Because it was a lot of fun to get together and watch a video on a big screen and see the look on the client's face. And that was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, in the days of the internet, a lot of folks, you send them the link. So you see, you just Dropbox them a video. And then I'll watch it and let you know what I think, which is the way it is. You can't complain. Technology helps us. Saves you on gas, right? You don't have to drive over to the client's office. Saves your time. You put it. But there was something very gratifying about being able to gauge how you did on the video by looking at the reaction on the client's face. And you just sit there in the meeting and you look over and say, I think they really like this. I think I did well here. And I miss that. There's a disconnect. Again, there's that word disconnect between producer and client. Everybody just wants to sit in their office and watch. And it is what it is. You do what the client asks and you follow the trends in the business and all this stuff. But it would be nice if, as we work through approval, I mean, part of delivering the final product is getting the approval, right? And is the screening. Approval and screening. And why, again, does the screening have to be send them a file of a Dropbox, they'll watch it at their office and let you know? I would love it if we could talk clients into going back to the old way. You come in and watch it and you tell us in person. And that's okay. That's just it is what it is. Especially now with the internet, not only that, but with people working all over the world. You know, we have clients that are all over the state and all over the country. So it's not like we can just hop on a plane and go take them it's just not how it's done anymore. I get it. Do I sound bitter? Maybe I sound really bitter. I don't know. Do I sound old and crotchety? I don't know. I'm getting there. All right, delivery and distribution, approval, screening. Then, again, this is all stuff, the deadline, right? Whoa, deadline. Oh my gosh, why don't we develop this in the production plan? The deadline should have been listed in the production plan. Let's go back to pre-production and did we follow the timeline? Deadline points to did we follow the timeline? Did we have a timeline? Production timeline. This has got to be, when it comes to what does it cost to make a video, let's say, well, time is money. So what does it cost? How much time do we have? The costs are different if we've got a week to slam something together versus we've got a month or two. Did we have a production timeline? And I'm thinking of this now at the end. I'm about ready to wrap this up. I need to go and get another drink of water or something else. But the reality is we don't think about production timeline. And that has a huge effect on the budget. The deadline, that should be question number one, when do you need it? What's the deadline on this? It really is. How much does it cost? What's the old thing? I need it now. I need it good, fast, and cheap, right? Can I just make that? I need it good, fast, and cheap. There's the old thing about you can pick any two of these. You can have it good and fast, it ain't going to be cheap. You can have it fast and cheap, but it ain't going to be good. Right? That whole thing. You can have it good, fast, and cheap. Pick any two of those, is what you tell people. Right? We don't really want to talk to clients like that. But we want to advise, and the video business is a perfect example of you cannot have all three good, fast, and cheap. So, deadline. Did we have a production timeline? We really, again, need to go back to pre-production and script and storyboard, even back in the inception of the project as we build the idea and build the concept. We need to include a production timeline as part of developing the script and storyboard. We really need script, storyboard, production timeline. That's got to be in there. Scope of project. Why am I writing the beginning of the video at the end? The beginning of this whole series, before we talk about how to establish a budget, we need to have in there script and storyboard, scope of project, audience, the concept, the whole thing all answered, and production timeline. I'll run through those again because that was kind of fun. So before we even begin to establish a budget, the budget that always comes at the end. You first do the scope of project, production timeline, script, storyboard, whatever that other stuff was that I said. I'm starting to lose it here. All right, so delivery and distribution, approval, screening, deadline, and scope of project. Also in pre-production, we should talk about deliverables. Delivery and distribution should include deliverables. Deliverables would be flash drive with files. Okay, video, and the files. The files are one formatted for YouTube, formatted for web. Okay, formatted for YouTube. It's probably the same thing, right? A master file. Maybe they want all raw footage. All right. So that's the deliverable, but maybe also they want us to archive it. That's something we don't talk about, archiving. And that's something I would like to really work on. Let's have an agreement at the beginning of the project that says, okay, we're going to go ahead and archive. We will be responsible for archiving the project. Or do we give you a hard drive? Who's going to store the project when it's all said and done? Delivery and distribution, and most important, collection of payment. Right? It's a hard thing to do in this business, in any business. Say, hey, you owe me the money. We need to get paid. We got to eat too, right? All of that kind of stuff. That's tough. It's tough for everybody. Nobody likes talking about money. Why is that? Anyway, that is the whole process, thinking through how to really think through the budget and what you want to spend to make your video project happen. What I want to do is, just for fun, I'm going to double check that this is still recording, because I would like to just talk about what we might do to come up with a video for kinds of videos. And a video that would inspire somebody to make a video. What kinds of videos are there out there? I'm going to do that on a separate clip.